Hello. So, what we're going to be talking about today is tapping and how to do some simple stuff for tapping. Introduction to how to actually play, which is important when you want to start learning the style. This is just how I've learned to do it. There's other ways. I just think mine's objectively better, no doubt, no doubt. So you might be wondering, where is tapping derived from? There's no exact point of origin for it, but one of the lead one of the people that inspired tapping to become such a popular thing in pop culture is probably Eddie Van Halen because of his solo in Eruption. Well, the entire song's solo, but that moment has triggered a lot of people to take up tapping and take it in new directions, such as people like Rob Scallon, Evett Young, bands like Good Game, um, musicians like Sarah Longfield, so on and so forth. I repeated someone in an awkward way there, but you know my point. Tapping has become a much larger thing than anyone could have expected at the time, with musicians such as Stanley Jordan redefining it back in the 60s or so, but not causing as many waves, unfortunately. But here I am today talking about how to do it. And yeah, so we'll start with simple technique, which would have to be the most important thing when beginning, at least for me, is you need to anchor your thumb on the side of the fretboard. By doing this, it gives you a point of reference as well as allows your muscle memory to build faster and greater. So, being able to just shift and know where you're going to be is very good. The second thing, which is much more important, but is kind of secondary, well, not really secondary, I phrased that poorly, but to play tapping, you want your fingers to be straight. If you have them at more flat angles, you're not going to be able to create as many dynamics with it. So you won't be able to get the same volume and range of notes as you would with a straighter finger. So as well as there's a lack of consistency with that. So with the straighter finger, you can get a much clearer note. Think about how you play a guitar normally. It's that same process, except over here. So once you have that down, another thing you have to think about is tapping is a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs, like a lot of normal guitar is. But the thing you have to think about, if you don't have your fingers up here, you need to think about what notes you're pulling off too. So do those notes work with what you want to play? Now, if you want to go for jazz stuff, you can use... If you want to go to jazz stuff or use things like polytonality, sometimes that can be useful, but for simple introduction, it's not the best for what you're trying to convey. So, you're going to want to think about that. So when working... So think of like a scale. So, G is just simply... And that works with all open frets, because the scale dictates the spacing of notes that works well together. So, by using scales, we can use tapping in a much nicer sounding way than if we didn't use that. And to expand on that further is, if you're sick of just using one finger and it's not enough for you, you can use things like adding the extra fingers on your other hand. So you can start working with your middle finger, or if you're skilled enough and you put enough time, you can add your ring finger. I'm not great with it still, I'm still working on it, but the hardest one, consistently stated, is the pinky, because it's fairly weak relative to the other ones, so it can take a lot longer and is a lot harder to work with. But once you get it down, you can do some really amazing stuff. Look to bands like Vasudeva, who their lead guitarist uses all of his fingers, and it's amazing to watch as he flies up and down the fretboard. And one thing I'll warn you, it's gonna suck for a bit. Your fingers are gonna hurt because they haven't built up the calluses like your normal playing fingers have. So it's gonna suck for a while of just that fight to make things sound good and actually be able to play for a long time. But do not give up on that fight, because when you come out the other side, it will be worth it, because you'll be able to play really interesting, very neat things that you couldn't achieve otherwise. That will be the end. Sorry for the light.